You are not tired because life demands too much. You are tired because your mind keeps fighting wars that reality never declared. 2,000 years ago, a slave in chains and an emperor on a throne discovered the exact same truth. The real battle was never outside them. It was inside. Today, that truth still holds. Over the next few minutes, you'll hear 7 ideas that have quietly kept people sane through collapse, loss, and war. Not slogans, but shifts in how you see your own mind. By the end, worry may never look the same to you again. There's a mistake almost everyone makes without noticing. We spend our energy trying to steer things that were never in our hands. Whether someone approves of us, how fast success arrives, whether a plan survives contact with reality, none of it was ever ours to command. And when the world doesn't cooperate, we don't just feel let down, we feel betrayed, as if life owed us something it never promised. Notice how your day actually runs. You send a message and start rehearsing replies that haven't been written yet. You do good work and quietly expect the world to notice on your schedule. Without meaning to, you've handed your piece over to outcomes that were never under your control. That's the moment anxiety moves in and takes the lease. Epictetus, a man who spent years enslaved before he ever taught a single student, put it plainly, some things are up to us and some things are not. Nearly all of our suffering comes from mixing up the two. Picture someone trying to row a boat by yelling orders at the ocean. The waves don't answer, the current doesn't negotiate. The only thing that moves is the rower closer to exhaustion, no closer to shore. Now picture the same person picking up the oars instead. The ocean hasn't changed, but suddenly there's something real to do, a direction, an effort, a choice. That was always the actual job. Marcus Aurelius ran an empire and still couldn't command tomorrow. So he stopped trying to rule fate and put his effort into the one territory that would always answer to him, his own character. Look at how much of your week goes into demanding certainty from people and outcomes that were never yours to demand it from. The relief doesn't come from finally winning that fight. It comes from realizing you never had to enter it. Your response was always the whole game. Your mind has a quiet habit. It takes a maybe and turns it into a certainty. A late reply becomes rejection. A small mistake becomes proof you're not enough. An uncertain future becomes a disaster you've already lived through before it's even had the chance to happen. Nothing in the world has changed, yet your body reacts as if the worst has already landed. Think about how often an ordinary day gets hijacked this way. A text goes unanswered for a few hours, and you're already writing the ending in your head. Someone's tone shifts slightly, and you go searching for a meaning that was never there. Your heart races, your chest tightens, sleep won't come, and by morning nothing outside you has actually changed. You've simply been exhausted by a fight that only ever happened in your head. Seneca wrote something that still lands 2,000 years later. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Picture walking through the woods at dusk. A dark shape stands between the trees. Your whole body braces for danger until you get closer and realize it's just the shadow of a broken branch. The fear was completely real. The danger never was. Go back to what kept you up a year ago. At the time it felt unbearable, permanent, like the end of something. Most of it has probably faded into something you can barely recall clearly. The future you dreaded never showed up, but the suffering you paid while waiting for it was real money, spent on nothing. There's one question that cuts through the story every time. What do I actually know right now? Not what am I afraid of, what do I know? That question alone is usually enough to bring you back from the future your mind invented to the present moment, which is the only place that was ever real. There's a quiet war most people fight every day and lose without ever understanding why. It isn't a war against failure or pain. It's a war against what already happened. You keep pushing on a door that's already closed, hoping that if you push hard enough, it will somehow open into a different past. You tell yourself that replaying the conversation one more time might finally change how it ends. That if you hold on to the disappointment long enough, life will notice and offer a refund. But every hour spent arguing with yesterday is an hour taken from the only day you can actually still shape. This is what keeps people stuck for years. They believe accepting what happened means approving of it, so they keep resisting, mistaking resistance for strength. But reality doesn't ask for your permission before it moves forward. Marcus Aurelius wrote that whatever comes to you was already woven into what is. Not because his life was easy, he wrote that while surrounded by plague, betrayal, and war, but because he understood something most people avoid. Pain usually comes in two layers. The event itself, and then the much heavier second layer, the endless argument, insisting it should never have happened. Picture someone repeatedly pressing on a splinter, convinced that pressing harder will somehow make it never have been there. The splinter doesn't care. The only thing multiplying is the pain. Now, picture that same person finally letting it be tended to. Nothing about what happened changes, but the fight against it stops, and that alone frees up everything they had been spending on resistance. Acceptance doesn't erase grief or pretend loss was fine. It simply ends the war between your mind and what already is. Once that war ends, all that leftover energy becomes available for the only question that actually matters. What do I do from here? One of the mind's favorite illusions is convincing you that this moment will last forever, that this pain will never lift, this heartbreak will never heal, this version of you is now permanent. But your mind keeps mistaking a passing weather system for the climate. Think back to who you were 5 years ago. The fears that felt like they'd swallow you whole, the nights that stole your sleep, the problems that seemed impossible to survive. Many of them have quietly dissolved into things you can barely recall in detail now. The storm felt endless while you stood inside it. Every storm still runs out of rain eventually. The real tragedy isn't that people suffer. Suffering comes with being human. The tragedy is building a permanent house, inside temporary weather, furnishing it. Deciding to live there because today felt heavy, and assuming it always will. The Stoics practiced reflecting on their own mortality, not to grow afraid of death, but to remember what life was actually worth. Every sunrise was one fewer than they'd get. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that praise fades, wealth fades, even the names of kings eventually get forgotten. Time doesn't negotiate with anyone. It just keeps moving everything along, without asking. Picture footprints on a beach at low tide, deep and certain looking. By the next tide, they're gone, not because anyone erased them on purpose, but because that's simply what tides do. Your worst days are footprints, not bedrock, even when they feel carved into stone. Ask yourself something most people avoid. If this year were your last, would you still spend tonight replaying an old argument? Still lose sleep over a mistake from months ago? The point was never to reach some perfect, finished version of your life. It was always this being here for the tide that's actually happening right now. Most people chase peace like it's a destination hiding somewhere up ahead, inside a bigger house, a certain relationship, a body that finally looks right. They tell themselves, once I get there, then I'll finally rest. But the goalposts keep quietly moving. Every time they arrive, the mind invents one more requirement, one more mountain, and peace stays exactly one step out of reach. Look at people who seem to have already arrived: wealth, recognition, everything. Most people spend a lifetime chasing, and you'll still find plenty of them wrestling with anxiety and emptiness behind closed doors. If peace could be purchased, the wealthiest people alive would never lose sleep. Clearly, that's not how it works. The Stoics understood something modern life keeps trying to talk us out of. The quality of your life isn't set by what you own, but by the condition of the mind that owns it. A restless mind can turn paradise into a waiting room. A steady one can walk through real chaos without losing its footing. Marcus Aurelius had more power than almost anyone in his era. Armies, wealth, the ability to reshape entire regions with a decision. Yet when he wrote privately at night, he rarely mentioned any of it. Instead, he kept circling back to one plain idea. A good life needs very little, and what it needs is mostly a matter of how you think. Picture someone carrying a glass of cloudy water through one beautiful landscape after another, new city, new job, new relationship, always looking down to find the same cloudy glass. They keep changing the scenery instead of settling the water. Peace isn't built the day life finally stops testing you. It never does. It's built in the small, repeated choices: wisdom over impulse, gratitude over comparison, courage over fear. Small on their own. Together, they become something storms can't easily reach. At some point, most people realize their biggest opponent was never another person, never their failures, never their circumstances. It was an old version of themselves they never quite agreed to release. People don't usually stay trapped in the past because the past is strong. They stay trapped because they keep wearing an identity that reality has already outgrown. Listen to your own thoughts for a while. I should have, if only I had. Why did this happen to me? Harmless sounding phrases that quietly keep you living in a room that no longer exists. The past has no real power until your mind agrees to move back in. Picture an old coat hanging in the closet, one that doesn't fit anymore, doesn't suit who you've become. But you keep putting it on, out of habit, because taking it off would mean admitting you're not that person anymore. That's what old identities do. The mind would rather wear a familiar, uncomfortable coat than walk out the door in something new and untested. That's why people keep introducing themselves through old wounds. I got betrayed. I failed. I wasn't enough. Repeat a sentence like that long enough, and it stops being a memory. It becomes a job description you never actually applied for. The Stoics understood that every sunrise doesn't offer a chance to rewrite yesterday. It offers a chance to stop living inside it. Marcus Aurelius didn't ask himself who he used to be. He asked who he would choose to be today. That question holds more freedom than most people find in a lifetime. Growth asks for a kind of small funeral, not for your potential, but for the excuses that came dressed as identity. The strongest people aren't the ones who never change. They're the ones willing to take off a coat that no longer fits, even when it's the only one they've ever known. If any of these 7 ideas landed, don't let it end as just another video. Take 1 minute of quiet and ask yourself, what's one fear, one belief, or one habit I'm ready to set down today? Let it go, because peace was never waiting somewhere out ahead. It was waiting for the version of you willing to choose it. If this resonated, tell me which truth hit hardest, and if you want a calmer, steadier mind, subscribe for the next one.